Okay guys, I'm recording this guide in 25-man difficulty, but you can apply most of it to 10-man difficulty as well. I know there are less mobs on 10-man, but in this strategy we're not killing any of the rages, so having those up should increase your DPS a little bit as well. It won't be as high as it is on 25-man, so if you're in a 10-man guild, don't worry if your DPS is slightly lower. Just compare yourself to the other ranks and see what you should be doing. Now, basically the key to this fight, there are two things that are really important in this fight. One is keeping as many dots on as many targets as possible, and two is to use as many shards as possible and to get as many shards back. Those two principles are really important for this fight. Now the first thing I'm going to say is that I'm not using Grimoire of Sacrifice for this fight. I'm using Grimoire of Supremacy with the Fell Imp pet, and the reason for this is that I'm not doing really much single target DPS at all, so Grimoire of Sacrifice is really not doing anything, whereas the Imp can do a fully effective DPS for the entire fight. Because he's a range pet, I use him instead of the Observer because the bosses have a close range stun as well as a lot of close damage. I don't know how well pets would fare against that. I haven't tested melee to see if they are viable, but that was my reasoning for using the Fellimp. Now what I do with him is until the bosses spawn, before the bosses spawn, he's helping me kill whatever targets I am attacking. But as soon as the bosses jump down, I'm just setting him on one of the bosses and he's attacking them the entire fight. And he's going to do about 8 million damage over the course of the entire fight, so it's quite substantial how much damage he does. Okay, so basically what I'm doing in this fight is I am using all of my shards for Soulwind Soul Swaps. I barely ever use Haunt. There's only a few situations in which I would use a Haunt. So what I'm doing is keeping all my dots up on the two bosses, Soulwind Soul Swapping each of the two bosses, and then doing the same with each of the strengths. Every time the strengths jump down, I'm keeping dots on them too. So there's 4 main targets that I'm keeping my dots on. Now I keep track of these with the shadowed unit frame boss frames, which you can see in the top right of my screen there. They display all my dots so I can easily keep track of when they need to be refreshed. Then I have the strengths dotted up too. Since I'm actually DPSing them anyway, I can very easily see when their dots need refreshing, so that's not something I have to worry about. So I'm keeping dots on all 4 of those targets as much as possible. Every time something is about to die, I'm drain souling them, and then I'll get all my shards back every time it dies. Now, what I was saying about using as many shards as possible is really important in this fight. If something is about to die, and you already have a few soul shards, you want to burn those shards as quickly as possible. So whether that's recasting Soulwind Soul Swaps on targets or using a couple of haunts, then that would be a situation where you might want to use a haunt. Is if you have shards, something's about to die, everything's dotted, there's something else to use your shards on. Throw out a couple of haunts, and then you'll get your shards back anyway when the mob dies. That's how I use haunt in this fight. So what I'm doing here is I'm just DPSing the strengths. I have my dots ticking on all 4 mobs, and every time I see a strength about to die, I'm just going to drain soul it. And when there are no strengths up, I'll just be single targeting the boss, making sure to keep cursive elements up on whichever targets I'm single DPSing. We usually have our rogues keeping it up, so I don't need to worry about it too much. Now, when a courage spawns, you can really use that as a chance to get some extra shards back. I'm not going to actually attack the courages until I can do so without having to move, but if you can get some extra shards off them, it's going to provide a really sudden boost to your damage. Now during the first minute of the fight, if your DPS is low, don't worry about it. It's going to get higher and higher throughout the fight. You might start out only doing 70k. Once the bosses are up and the strengths are up, your damage is going to go up to 110k plus, easy. On 25-man, by the time this fight gets to the end, I'm usually on about 130k. Now, whenever you have Dark Soul up, again, I'm not really changing anything in my rotation. I'm just keeping dots up on as many targets as I can and nuking the bosses. Once the bosses themselves get to below 20%, I'll be switching my primary DPS to the bosses with Drain Soul, at which point I have pretty much unlimited shards, so I can keep dots up on all 4 targets, and I'll have some extra shards for haunt usage, which is a real big boost to your DPS. And that's also when I will choose to use Doomguard on this fight, in most situations. I don't in this particular video, but since Doomguard doesn't actually benefit from Bloodlust right now, using him below 20% is definitely the best place to use him. And again, the longer this fight goes on, your damage is just going to go up and up and up and up and up. For people that are only watching this for how to get ranked, maybe you've already got this on progression, there is a little trick you can do if you're using this Ring of Frost tactic, which we are here. When the bosses are on about 3% health, you can Seed of Corruption the rages in the Frost Novas, and obviously they will break free, but that's going to give you a huge boost to your DPS right at the very end. But please, if you're going to do this, check with your raid leader first that it's okay, and make sure the bosses are low enough that you're not going to wipe your raid. Don't do it without permission, or people are going to get very mad at you. Again, that's just for something for if people want to know how to get ranked, or how the people on World of Logs are doing 160k DPS on this fight. It's because they did that. Other than that, it's just about maintaining your dots on all the targets for as long as possible, and getting your shards back every time something dies, and using those shards to funnel more damage, just to sustain fight. Try to minimize your movement as well. The bosses are spread out a little bit too far here for me to stay in the same spot, but ideally you wouldn't ever move from the one spot. You would stay where you are the entire fight, just turning around to attack whichever target you want to single target DPS. Remember, you don't need to be facing your target to solo and soul swap. Okay guys, if you like this guide, remember to subscribe for more videos, or you can watch me live on twitch.tv/Evrelia, and remember to rate, comment and subscribe.